My name is Ellie Michaela Young, and I'm a lecturer in fashion and visual cultures at Middlesex University. And I'm a fashion history researcher with a focus on Jamaica and, as it goes, more the broader Caribbean as I'm continuing through my research. I thought I might give a bit of an explanation of why we decided to set up the Caribbean Research Network, and why we thought it was important to start a network that provides opportunities for researchers focused on the Caribbean and its diasporas. So this is something that I really started to think about in 2014 when I started my PhD research. My research particularly looks at fashion and textiles produced and worn in Jamaica between 1950 and 1975. And almost immediately I was faced with problems about finding literature, archival material, and material objects to try and think about how do I think about fashion and textiles in Jamaica. And as I was encountering all these problems, I just kept thinking, how is it so difficult to find this material when the Caribbean has about 7,000 islands with 44 million people? And it's been argued by many scholars that it's the first region in modern history where distinctive social systems arose, combining peoples of different cultures, social statuses, and physical types. And even there's a researcher called Anthony King who argues that it was the colonies on the periphery, not the center of the empire, that were the first globally multiracial, multicultural, multi-continental societies of any substantial scale. So for me, this kind of started to raise questions of how can we have a really comprehensive understanding of design and its histories if one of the most important regions in global history is being excluded or completely ignored? So in addition to the limited archival and material I found and the literature, one thing that I also noticed is I was encountering the same researchers over and over and over. And at that time when I started, I think there was 5 people that I could name. It's grown slightly now. But for me, I just thought, that can't be right. There must be people across the globe that I just don't know about doing this research. So we decided, there was a group of us that have worked together on different things. So we decided, let's come together as a group, create this network, and see if we can find different ways and different opportunities for people from the Caribbean or people researching the Caribbean and its diasporas to share their research. Anyway, so that's basically why we sort of formed this network. It's not a formal academic network, it's just a group of people that we've worked together on different things, and we thought this is an opportunity now to actually situate the Caribbean and its diaspora in important narratives about design and its histories where they've constantly been excluded. Anyway, so I know you don't want to listen to me talking all evening, so I'm going to introduce Miriam. And Miriam's going to kick off the presentations. Miriam's also a member of the network, but Miriam's going to be the chair for the session. So I just thought I'd give you an introduction, then I can introduce Miriam. She will do a presentation, and then she's going to introduce the other speakers to you. Oh, as well as one of our speakers not joined yet, there's another one that fell out short notice. So it might be that the speakers 15 minutes was not enough, so they might need a little bit more, which I think is fine if we've got one less speaker. So Miriam Hines Smith is a mother, wife, artist, and educator committed to the development of aspiring artists and entrepreneurs. She's the Dean of the School of Visual Arts at Edna Manley College of Visual and Performing Arts. She's a Sheving alumni and has an honors graduate with a master's degree in fashion and design from Westminster. Say that, can't even say the name myself. Say the word. Thank you. I'm English and I can't even pronounce it. Winchester School of Art. She's an honors graduate of Edna Manley College, and she's trained as an educator from the University of Technology in Jamaica. As a Christian, her work is emotive yet nuanced and seeks to confront narratives of cultural identity, colonialism, and issues of violence against women and children. So, Miriam, you have the floor.
Thank you for that introduction, Ellie. Thank you, guys. Thank you all for joining. It is indeed a fantastic opportunity for us to collaborate like this, for us to have conversations which will actually nurture the propagation of more information coming out of our research each time we engage. So thank you again, Ellie, for being the instigator of all of this. Okay, so my presentation.
Remember to share your screen.
Yes. So I will be having just a brief conversation with you this morning on a very interesting topic there, as Ellie has indicated. Yeah. So we'll be looking broadly at the histories of colonization, empire, and legacy, particularly to approaches on the design process. Have these histories produced an absence of what some call a Caribbean aesthetic? So I want to just define one particular word there, and that's the word aesthetic as defined by the Oxford Dictionary. It states that aesthetic is concerned with the qualities and ideas of a work of art or literature that relates to beauty and the nature of art. But I'd also like to add that within the approach and the design process, particularly speaking to a space that is as volatile as the Caribbean and its diaspora, I would like to also posit the idea that design aesthetic also speaks to people and places. Yes, social constructs and ways of being. Now, in considering the histories, as it states here, of colonization and empire, through the examination of various objects, creative practices, I will be attempting to examine and consider the influence of indigenous, West African, and European approaches on the design process. These objects, in quotes, may be tangible and ephemeral as designs of system and ways of being. And so the critical question is, have these histories produced an absence of what is deemed a Caribbean aesthetic? Now, the formation and history of the Caribbean did not begin in 1492 when Christopher Columbus landed in Bahamas. The islands were already inhabited by the Siboney, Arawak, and the Carib people from mainland America. The Arawak probably came from northern South America about 5,000 years prior. They settled on a number of the Caribbean islands where they lived by farming. They're known as Taino, and sorry? Someone said something? There was a pause? Okay.
I don't think so, Miriam.
Okay, they're known as Taino and Igneri. Now, colonization by the first Europeans, the Spaniards, destroyed existing Taino and Ignerian island cultures, commencing with the naming of Hispaniola in 1492. The Arawak people on the island of Jamaica were decimated by the misdirected Christopher Columbus in 1494, enslaving to seeming extinction the gentle inhabitants of the land. This was further exacerbated by a surge in the exploits and capitalist expansion of the British Empire and hierarchical plutocracy, buoyed by the systemic enslavement of Africans from the continent through the treacherous Middle Passage from Britain to Africa, the Caribbean, and North America. Now, the new design of the Caribbean space, and by design I refer to the unfolding that would impact the objects of the everyday process of making, ways of being, and the systems so designed that implicitly impacted ways of thinking and actions, our aesthetic sensibilities, which is our very existence. Now, I would again reference the Oxford Dictionary that determines this to be systems that are specific and in most cases detailed and designed to create a particular outcome. Yes, it's intentional in creating a thinking agent, though it is sometimes used to refer to the nature of something. Now, in considering the histories of colonization and empire, For the purpose of this conversation, I'll be referencing various island spaces within the Caribbean, however, chiefly through various creative practices in Jamaica. Production of handcraft items in Jamaica dates to the subsistence production of implements from the period of our earliest inhabitants, the Tainos. Here, I'm sharing with you a few objects that I came across in my research that, looking at the object on the extreme left, when we're talking about memory and retention and the reflection of things from the everyday, I'm also looking at the weaving of this basket by this illustration of a Taino that actually reflects here on this carved Taino sculpture, which also reflects the woven basket from Ghana in terms of patterning. Now, we know that the period of extraction, yes, also saw the boom of the indigo plantation in Jamaica, which of course would have had its roots and knowledge base from the mainland Africa, right? Now, we know that here we would have seen a carry forward as with these apparel that found their way into our archives here at the Institute of Jamaica's museum, which dates around coming forward to 20th century, 1968. Yes, so these are just some samples and examples of what we have in archive here. Now, here I'm sharing images of the legato bark tree doilies. These are actually a set of 6 that are constructed from the outer bark of the legato tree, which actually is lace-like and is said to be particularly durable. Now, again, here the thoughts are that for one to identify something in a space, a new space, that this would have had to have been a retained practice from mainland Africa, right? And so the African Caribbean Institute of Jamaica, Jamaica Memory Bank, in its publication posit that these approaches to the making of utilitarian items of aesthetic consideration represents areas where skills have been passed down through generations, skills retained in memory, yes? Not skills that were imposed or assimilated or taught and were kept alive even during periods of enslavement. Now, these practices are executed by individuals in a space of displacement, yes? And if you look carefully at the patterning, if you are ever familiar with the space in Jamaica, this is so reminiscent of crochet, yes? But if you were to look at the fiber count in each of these loops, you expect there's no more than 4 threads to the construct, right? Now, this would be dating as if you encounter the work of Stevie Buckridge, this you would know it would have been coming as documentation from the journals of Long, Edward Long, yes. And so it was of interest to see these things be manifested. It was of interest to see these things be made. And also were things that were seen as value by the hierarchy of the day. Now, if we also look at these images, and I'm going back to illustrations from the period of the Taino, we still see retained practice of this coming forward in present day Jamaica. So for example, the image at the top where there's a drawing of a hammock, we still have that as a practice amongst our inhabitants here in Jamaica, yes? An item of leisure, using, of course, alternate materials. And if we talk about retention, we're also looking at the Lobi from Burkina Faso, which is this chair, this curved chair, that is also seen as evidence in the chair to the extreme right, which is a reclining ceremonial stool here that we have as a part of the museum keep evidencing Taino culture on the island. And this piece is actually housed at the National Gallery of Jamaica. Now, fast forward again to present day 2020, 2022, we have individuals who have also adopted through working with Rattan and Wicca, these chairs, the chaise lounge that are created by artisan Arthur Williams. Yes, so what we see are a repeating and a retention of basic forms and basic functional objects and artifacts that continues to be a part of our culture. I would also like for us to look at the practice of wood carving. Now, wood carving is done all across the island in Jamaica. You may find that the tools used are from the very basic chisel and mallet to create works of art, as seen here on the left. So here we have a gentleman that calls himself Branzo. Branzo's been creating craft objects for over 50 years in the same spot in the grill. Yes, and we also have, others who are still working with the natural. They're taking the wood as it comes from the tree and creating mortar and pestle. However, we still now have the more contemporary designers who are using advanced tools and mechanisms to create smoother finish and what appears to be a more opulent design to what is a traditional make of a utilitarian object. We also have here a slide I'm sharing with you of works of art in applique from Dahomey. Yes, Dahomey, Benin. These came to Jamaica as gifts around 1968. Now, if we look at the work executed in the Dorothy McNabb establishment, which was housed in Montego Bay, we see similar treatment in technique to that executed on the hem of these garments, which would be depicting the everyday scenery of Jamaican life at the time. And if we then look at works created by students within the Edna Manley College using similar approaches, we see where these practices are maintained and carried forward, in that what keeps happening is a shift in the aesthetic approach to the utilization of similar techniques. Now, embroidery and straw work is again a practice that dates back to the very first slide, which would have been from the days of the Taino, rooted in that practice and that establishment, that society, and also found in the west coast of Africa. What existed at the time in the development of pre-independence Jamaica would have been what were called cottage industries, or labor for time, where ladies would be engaging in the practice of making these things in their homes and then bringing them to a space where they would be collected and they would be paid for. Now, we have had in Jamaica a high influx of imported creations that tend to impact and create an imbalance of the handcraft that are made here on the island. It disrupts the economy of these individuals that creates these works of art, these craft items. And so you find that there have been ebbs and highs and lows and flows of these creation over time in Jamaican society. Yeah. The work is executed as what we call piecework. So they're paid by batch, paid by what is completed. And so we have present day now an establishment called Beanie Bud that really has invested in the re-engaging of a number of craft persons across the island in the creation of these objects. Now, what has changed? The notion of design comes into play. One of the things I must also note is that these skills, these handcraft is heavily tied to, again, the tourism sector. It's heavily tied to the north. It's heavily tied to what comes into the island as revenue. And in instances, you will find that there is an imbalance, again, in this form of extraction of talent, in this form of extraction of skills, and in this form of extraction of resource. Now, I hope I was, yes, okay. Now, if we look at one of the most outstanding skill sets that abides on this island, abides within the Caribbean space, it is the creation of ceramic objects. Yes, working with the earth, carving and creating things out of clay, molding and forming utilitarian forms, as well as forms for aesthetic purposes, using earthenware. Now, one of the things that I've found is that a number of individuals who have carried this forward have in the initial onset have had no formal training. One such an individual would have been Cecil Baugh, but let me also bring into the conversation Malu. Now, Malu, or Louisa Lou Jones, would have been one of the individuals who would have been working in the lowlands, Baugh in the highlands, Portland. The parts of these individuals intersected, and they intuitively nurtured each other's practice. Baugh going away to the US to study, but Malu staying here and practicing even further, engaging others in the practice, creating her traditional earthenware yaba pots, which actually reflects the ways of making and form that is significant to the Nigerian, Gowari, Yoruba, and Igbo, and Benin pot making traditions. Now, when we talk about working with forms and working with materials that have existed, there is also the push to innovate against the time. And one of the things that came out of the early development of ceramics in Jamaica was Cecil Baugh's exploration of glazes, creating what was then called the Egyptian blue glaze. And that is demonstrated on the bottom left image here on slide. Now, I also speak to observational practitioners, which brings me to the gentleman on the right. Now, Theophilus, as he's known, Theophilus Reed, we call him Blessed, works out of Rosetown. Theophilus came to be immersed in the practice of pottery making, watching his mom create these pots. And it's been said that she also seemingly worked in the formation of along the lines of Malu. But the beautiful thing about Theophilus' approach and work within the ceramic culture here is just his fearlessness at engaging the process and the communal approach that he takes to the making and creation of these objects that are actually made and fired again in the similar approach to that of the West African, Nigerian, Gowari, Yoruba, and Igbo nations. Now, one of the things that we've had the benefit of is the continuation and the carry forward of these traditions. So we have Cecil Ball, who became a lecturer at what was the Jamaica School of Art pre-1946, coming from the North Street location of the Jamaica School of Art, working alongside individuals such as Edna Manley as well. He would have now taught individuals such as Norma Harrock, Michael Lane, Philip Supersad, and Jean Pearson, each individual being grounded in the fundamentals of ceramics, have become their own, developed their own direction, and have become quite renowned in their skills and execution, working in very distinct forms. So again, this speaks very clearly to the sensibility or the notion that when one thinks of a cabin aesthetic, one needs to also consider individuals and individual experiences and individual tendencies, individual notions, and the visceral experiences that are then layered on these objects that are created. Yes. And whereas Norma would have had several experiences outside of the island, those would have come into play, allowing her to pull from and create these amalgams in creative forms. Supersad, coming from an Indo-African heritage, also pulls on that memory, also puts on that experience in the creation of his work. Similarly, Michael references the textures and the tones of his environment and visceral emotions in terms of the creation of the species. We see Jean Pearson creating almost like a Benin type featured faces, quite enormous, quite, what should I say, monumental in form, as he works predominantly on representing features and faces of the feminine. Now, I also want to look at a significant object, the drum. The drum plays a critical role in our ancestral history. The drum has critical significance to our heritage, particularly within Maroon society. As we would know, this would be what announces the call, the drum with the abeng, yes, which pushes to rituals, which pushes to dancing, which pushes to performance. And the djembe drum, which actually seen at center here, is atypical to Africa as its space of origin. It's found pretty much in the repertoire of drummers here on the island. But one of the things I'd like to also indicate is the fact that here in Jamaica, we've also developed the kete drums, seen at left, one called the repeater, the bass, the funde. These are Jamaican drums, functioning similarly, but sounding and echoing and resonating quite differently. Philip has also, I must tell you, has never been taught how to make these drums. This is something that he has approached quite intuitively and has merged it with his practice in ceramics. So you will see on the right here, he's playing what is called an udu. It's a ceramic drum that came about, the story goes, quite accidentally, wherein a woman in Africa would have been taking a ceramic container to retrieve water, and accidentally got a hole in it, and that hole created different sounds with the hand passing over and to the side of the object. Now, you will see on the ground there where Philip has actually continued with his ceramic work in the formation of these drums. So again, bringing a different kind of aesthetic vitality to an object, but also through the sound and through the engagement of this drum also affects space and thought and way of being. I think I'm going through my slides too fast. So I also want to touch quite briefly on the syncretic spirituality and resistance. And now I'm referencing Haiti and their culture of the creation of drapos and the syncretic nature of their worship. Here in Jamaica, we also have what mirrors that practice through our revival setting, which often unfolds in spaces such as Wat Town. Now, in looking at the drapos on the right, which were created by Ebony Patterson, we see also her reflection on space, having moved across to Haiti to participate in the Ghetto Biennale 2009 in Port-au-Prince, wherein she's now recrafted works of art that resembles and pays homage to the Haitian drapo. Again, moving in and out of spaces, but honoring and replicating and positioning her work to pay homage to a particular space. The candles here also mimics what would be seen at a revival setting or a Veve setting, voodoo setting in Haiti. I've highlighted the drapo to the right, top right, to single out the formation of that drum in relation to the djembe, which I showed earlier, looking at the similarity in that conical triangular form. I believe too that within these spaces we would find and see the existence of these formations, understanding the movement of individuals from the continent of Africa to Haiti. And that would also have seen a transportation of in memory and evidence in making of similar objects. Now, I'm going to be spending quite a bit of time looking at the craft development in Jamaica. These from a space of retention that have been morphed and framed within a space of industry, yes, and mechanization. Now, pre-independence Jamaica, from as far back as 1946, there have been pushes to create niches of craft creations, and the list I have here, it's not exhausted. There are probably a few that I've missed, where they started in 1946 with the Craft Development Council, which moved again, and at each iteration became another formation or a total discrete entity, solely looking at the development of objects, items, fabric, creative paraphernalia, utilitarian items that would really be brought to the tourism sector. Now, I purposely position this print here. Print is my core. This would have been a very early print done in Jamaica by what was then Carabatique, not Carabatique, sorry, Ruth Claridge. Yes. Now the patterning on the dress, you will note, are of tropical foliage, tropical design, but it's so beautifully interwoven that the design is quite seamless across the surface. And this is where the referencing of the environment and the introduction of mechanizations have amplified what production in textiles and design became. So in as much as there was the overlay of mechanization, the environment still informed what became the manifested works demonstrated here. Now, I want to also amplify that pre-independence, there was a massive surge in terms of fashion and design in Jamaica. If you look at the dates of all of these women featured here, from Norma Soas, who was someone I personally encountered as a student. She was heavily invested in student and trying to find ways to engage us in the practice with fashion designers, with fashion houses, looking at what was coming out now that we were in a space that was controlled in terms of what was being taught, what was being amplified, and how we then would, in our own space and time, as individuals, expand and extract and import and redesign what became known as, or could be known as, Jamaican fashion. Elaine Witter ran Lane and did so much for the fashion industry. Annie Lopez, who transitioned from very structured cuts and garments to also employing, as you'd see here, hand-painted techniques on garments that she created. Again, this would be one of the first exemplars, bringing the Jamaican, then by independence, flag, colors of the flag to bear on fashion. Now, as an innovator, I highlight Frances Keene Headley, whose work, as you'll see here on Althea Lang, one of the Jamaica's most outstanding supermodel, the cutwork embroidery. Now, this brought back to mind the work and painstaking approach to the doilies first seen in previous slides, that is reminiscent of the detailing on the bodice of the garment being worn by Althea Lang here. Very high detail, very intricate work, and all done by hand. Others of note that became particular trailblazers, I would have been Mercedes Sadie Soas, yes, who also engaged in the utilization of hand painting on garments that she created. And these became very fluid in designs, again, referencing the local flora and fauna. But I would like to also spend some time here looking at Ivy Ralph, who brought fashion, the core of politics to fashion with her design of the Kariba, which went through the island and its political scheme like wildfire, being adopted by the then Prime Minister Michael Manley. Now, one of the areas of retention that we see in our everyday, but really I don't believe we pay much attention to, is the use of Adinkra symbols. Here we see Miss Lou, our folklorist of international renown, wearing a design that actually reflects either notions of the Adinkra or notions of pictograph that would have been seen in our caves here, the Taino caves in St. Catherine. Jewelry, architecture also reflects our retained histories of design and motif. Now, I also want to bring note to Mama G, Sonia Sims, who is a paramount queen of the Maroons. Her, as she said, she's never been taught in the construction of garments, etc., but created for 2013 Rastafari celebration 2 ensemble that brings to mind the bark cloth constructs coming out of Uganda. And so we again look at the notions of retention in the DNA, in the blood, in the mind, in the spirit. Well, what would be the celebration or notions of influence if we don't look at the impact of reggae and Rastafari on fashion and clothing across the Caribbean, in Trinidad, across the island in Jamaica? The coloration, the icons, they all play a significant role in what reflects as Rastafari. Now, on the global scale, one may see and wonder about the appropriation of same from designers such as Valentino, performers such as Erykah Badu, and this you're looking at are images from what would have been a Viva Summer Fashion Special in 2015, where Rasta colors are amplified in that pop culture space of external fashion and fashion design. But coming back to the Caribbean, going back to the lace, going back to the hand creation, we're looking at the survival again within another Caribbean space of the approach to making and creating. Here we have collaboration with Meling Esau, Trinidadian fashion designer, and Michaela Elaine, who created Papio, which had a fantastic presentation of her line 2023. These were amazing. The silhouettes, the straw hats, the detailing of, and again, the appropriation of the European puff sleeve, creating this amalgam of a outstanding Caribbean collection. Speaking to being in spaces and places, I cannot but mention Haitian Italian designer Stella Jean, who uses and amplifies her cultural signifiers on prints and her garments that she then creates her collections from. But it is also interesting that for the 2023 Milan, Stella actually staged a sit-in, a hunger strike, because she's still protesting within these spaces that she is the only Black representation of Afro descent within the space as a member of that group. And so that is also of significance. Now, here we are looking at spaces that help to foster the reimagining and retention and identity of a space through fabric. Jadiri, it's an amalgamation of Jamaican approaches to adiri, which is an African approach to cloth making and design. The Jadiri is a signifier that this is now being fostered, framed, and developed by Jamaicans for Jamaicans with the underlying retention of the approach as would have been taken in Africa through batik and stamping and dyeing. The individual moving this program along is Ghanaian master artist, Dr. Alau Amate Lukman. He facilitates this kind of approach, which is very much outside of a institutional tertiary framing, but is open to any and all individuals who would like to acquire the skill. Again, just for reference, the fact that kente and tie-dye is also significant to maroon spaces and heritage within Jamaica. Other individuals, Nella Stewart, who have worked with Allow through the JBDC, has created her own line of fabrics that even as a senior designer is doing particularly well in this area of practice. Yes, but I'd also like to also highlight another practitioner within this field, Laura Lee Jones, who actually started working in this frame before entering a trained school environment, working with individuals such as Don Scott, again, carrying forward and working with a Ghanaian artist who was living in Jamaica in the 90s and has carried this forward into her formal training, but continues to work in a commercial context to meet the market demand. Now, students within the framing of Edna Manley are exposed to the technical and the aesthetic, but I'd also like to bring this into a conversation that really discusses the notion of Caribbean aesthetic. It is the notion that there is a singular Caribbean aesthetic, or to say Caribbean aesthetic, creates a space of static simplicity. If we look at and understand the tie dialectics of Caribbean aesthetics, it encompasses our shared history, yes, that unites us, but still allows for experience in our own spaces with varied nuances and also our varied experiences, with the underpinning of our multi-transatlantic displacement and with the innate carriage of ways of being rooted in the multiplicities of cultures that we now experience. This underscores the fact that we will continually evolve. We will continually push against the imposed, or we will extract from what we have been exposed to as a space, a melting pot, as a space wherein we have writers and thinkers and philosophers. We have the Walcotts of St. Lucia. We have the Pattersons, the Ebony G. Pattersons, the Cecil Coopers. We have the Philip Thomas, the Patrona Morrisons, who are creators and thinkers. We have the musicians who question, who put forward new notions. We have the dancehall that has evolved as an aesthetic. So therefore, it doesn't, we would be locking ourselves into a space and time that would not suit us. In fact, I believe that the Caribbean aesthetic defies anything that is homogeneous in any singular way. And therefore, we have the ability to extract, repel, or accept what crosses our island spaces to determine our futures. I thank you for your time. I thank you for your attention, and I thank you for being a part of this conversation.
Thank you very much, Miriam. We're gonna keep question and answers till the end. So Miriam, do you want to introduce Katrina next?
Yes, I would love to introduce Katrina at this point. Katrina Jacobson studied archaeology at the University of Paris at the Pantheon-Sorbonne. She holds a master's degree in archaeology, specializing in the pre-Columbian period in the Caribbean. She joined the European Research Project ERC Synergy Nexus 1492 as a PhD student in creolization, as a PhD student in 2013. Her PhD, Julia Gaël, Céramique, Identité culturelle et créolisation, focuses on an archaeoanthropological study of ceramics in multicultural Caribbean societies from the pre-colonial period to the present. She has presented her research at various international conferences. Katarina works at the Musée Départemental d'Archéologie Pre-Columbienne Edgar Clerc in Guadeloupe as a collections manager currently. She holds the position of director of the Musée Municipal Saint-Jean-Pérez and is also co-curator and international coordinator of the international exhibition Caribbean Ties and co-founder of the Local Voices movement. Katarina participates in various heritage enhancement initiative and is, since the end of 2022, vice president of the board of directors of the Museum Association of the Caribbean, MAC. Colleagues, I present to you Katarina Jacobson.
Good afternoon, everyone. Yes, I'm Katarina Jacobson. I'm French. You will listen to it on my accent. And today I'm gonna talk about ceramics because that's my main focus in archaeology. I will start to share my screen now. And now, let me start. You talk about it, Miriam, a bit, and I will continue and going deeper in it. Where is my, yes, there. Okay. Yes. Okay, cool. Now you can see. Yes, then I want to talk about ceramic, but indigenous ceramic. And as you say, Miriam, and as all of us, we know as a result of the colonization and invasion of European, the society, indigenous society that Christopher Columbus in 1492 in the Great Antilles, and after the one Duplessis met in the Les Antilles, those society does not exist anymore. Moreover, the Kalinago, the Garifuna, and the Taino descendants have lost their knowledge and the skill of making ceramics. And most of them don't produce ceramics anymore. What we know about those production is related to ethnoarchaeological studies we have in the region since more or less 15 years. And that's what we call the traditional Creole potters. I'm too fast. Then we call it traditional Creole pottery. We can call it also folk Afro-Caribbean. And what we put in this umbrella, it's this ceramic made without the wheel, because the wheel, it's a technological advance which appear with the European. And those potters who make the traditional way of making ceramic, those techniques are heritated from West Africa, but also European, but we also can see indigenous traces in this making process. And we call this ceramic at the beginning the transcultural ceramic, then Creole ceramic. And this ceramic is really integral part of the Afro-Caribbean identity of our Caribbean societies. Where is the ceramic produced today? In the traditional way of making ceramic is produced in some islands like Hispaniola, Dominican Republic, Antigua, Nevis, Jamaica, of course, St. Lucia, and also a few years ago, still in Martinique. And today I'm going to talk about two case studies. That's the case study I had for my PhD. One in Dominican Republic in Iguerito, and the other one in Choiseul, Saint Lucia. Then how we collect the data. First of all, I've been to the groups and the potters to look at the way they were making the ceramic. Why we were doing this? It's really to record all those techniques. And as I was telling you at the beginning, some of those techniques still continue and are part of the process of some ceramic process today. Then when I went to those communities, something was really useful. It's because I was a woman, and this is useful, you will see later. And I speak Creole. For the Les Antilles was really important because the women, the potters, many women could speak to me in Creole. And for the English case study, I was with someone which speak Spanish, and that was more fluent. I did semi-directive interview. That means that I had some teams, and I asked people to feel free to say what they wanted to say following those teams, like manufacture of the pot, the process of the selling, the inheritance and transmission, and what was the place of the pottery in the economy of their community or the island. For this, I make recording of film, photo, and audio. The first case study is in Saint Lucia, but before to just come back to those case study, as I was saying, the ceramic is made in other islands, like Antigua. You can see it in a sea view farm, and I could meet the only one potter still in life. Her name is Hyacinthe Hillhouse, and she's in a workshop. There is a community in Nevis also, but I couldn't go to visit them. In Jamaica, there is a few in the capital, Kingston, and in Jamaica, the town of Satan was the place where all the ceramic was made, and it was really a massive production place. But less than 10 years ago, the last potters died, and since there is no more pottery making in Martinique. To come back to Saint Lucia, then you can see on the bottom the place where the ceramic is made. It's in Choiseul, the district of Choiseul, and there is different places, Mention, Industrie, Delcer, Pointe Caraïbe, and that's the place where it's recorded that the last indigenous people were living. It's really important. When I've been there, I met 16 potters from 20 years to 80 years, and the average was 50 years old. You can see it's all kind of faces, but as you can see, it's only women. And the pottery is secondary activities. The men are there, but they do not produce ceramic. They can just come and help for some steps. They learn the process of making the ceramic from their mother and grandmother in between 12 and 15 years old. What we see is this know-how. It's really it's less and less transmitted because it's really hard work. And actually, the lady said that they're spending too much time, and for not a lot of money, and they don't want to transmit this to the next generation. The only one I met she was 21 when I met her, and I came back last year, and she told me, no, I don't want to continue anymore because it's not economical situation to do ceramic. And as I was saying, that the making of pot is located in Choiseul, and Choiseul is known as the last place of the Caribs. And for all those people, those women making ceramics today, for them, the knowledge is coming from those Caribs. Those Caribs people, and they want to continue to maintain this tradition because of those indigenous people they are descendant of. Today, what we can say is that the St. Lucian ceramic is a combination of indigenous European, French and English, and African. All this can be seen in the techniques, in the shape, in the design. The ceramic has less and less design, but some shape look like the indigenous shape and the African shape. You have some elements which can help us to trace all those heritage. What we can say is this production is is organized during January to April and during the summer, mostly during the week. And before this, the activity of the ceramic production was really a big activity, and it was economical. The woman had a really powerful economic statue in St. Lucia, and they were selling the ceramic in Castries. They were selling also in Vieux-Fort. In Castries, they were going with a canoe, and in Vieux-Fort, which is close by, they were walking close by, like 20 minutes actually in car. And today you can find it in Choiseul if you go to their workshop, or they can sell it to people which who will sell them in the capital Castries. They're producing coal pot and canary. I will show you the picture. And what is interesting, it's like all St. Lucian had a coal pot. I even have one in my house. It's important because to don't be dependent of the boat coming from Europe and coming from abroad, because they had the issue, and for a time there was no boat coming in St. Lucia, and the only way they had they had no gas, and the only way they had to cook was to use those coal pot and canary. And that's why it's the tradition for everyone to have this, and this maintain the production process. They sell also for tourists, and that start to change the way of making small shape for the tourists. And sometimes the hotels buy the coal pot. There is also related to this the myth of Tijan, which Tijan learned how to do ceramic, because he learned this from the Caribs. And this is why, and after he left, and when he left, he went to the moon, and that's why you see those shadows in the moon. It's Tijan with something on his head. I will just show you the process, the ceramic production, to explain to you, and we'll go quick on it, but it's like coming from the raw material procurement. You go to the roof art, the preforming, the surface treatment, the firing, and you finish with the product. During this process, you have different factors to take in account: the know-how, the knowledge, but environmental and social factor. and some we can't see and identify them in archaeology. That's why we go to see actual communities to try to have information about those external factors. Just to show you a picture in St. Lucia, this is a picture of the workshop. They are still making those workshops. You have the toolkit and some process from digging the earth to look for the clay. You have different kind of clay. That's the right picture with two clay, like one more sandy than the other one, and different step of making the pot from the bottom to the upper part. The firing process, it's an open fire process. You can have small fire for the small pots, and actually more and more they want to be in and to go fast. And some of the potters, they accept to have a kind of close kiln. It's not kiln, it's kiln. They want to have some kiln to go faster. But most of them don't want, they want to really keep the tradition and use the open firing process. And that's, we don't know if it's what is the best, because this kiln is useful for them to go fast, but for them it's like they are changing the process they learn and they inherited from the indigenous. And downstairs, down of the picture, you can see manufacturing objects that they are producing. The other case study is Dominican Republic. And as you can see, this is the map of Hispaniola, and Iguarito, it's in the north east of Hispaniola. In this place, I met Gloria, which is the only potter left actually in these Iguarito places. A few years ago, we could find a few of them. Actually, there is, I think, 2, but I could meet only 1 in Iguarito. The pottery is still activity from women, made by women. The men are there, but just from small steps, like going to take the clay, to carry the clay, to make the firing. The most complicated steps are for the men. They are making this activity during the day, during the week, before noon or after 5. They know and they learn how to make pottery with their mother. And in this case, Gloria learned with her mother, but she also trained some potters, because, you know, if there is a woman coming, as we could see it in the material, and we know from the literature, sometimes the women, they were coming from another village to the village of their husband, and in this case, they were making pots in the way they learn in their own village, or sometimes they could learn how to make pots in the new village, because sometimes the techniques of making are not the same. It's always the same thing. The know-how is less and less transmitted for the same reason. And also, like in St. Lucia, they know they inherited this knowledge from Los Indios, the indigenous Taino people. Actually, we can say that the ceramic from Dominican Republic has heritage and is a mix of indigenous, European, Spanish, and African. As I was saying, it's all they are producing the ceramic during the week. but all the year. You can have production all the year, and before they were selling it in the village, in the valley, and even farther beyond the Cordillera Septentrional that's been close by the coast. But today, she's selling, Gloria selling her pot only in her village. She's producing Oya and Tinahas. And mainly it's only local people who want to buy those. She had 2 daughters, and she doesn't want not at all transmit this knowledge. This is a workshop and some picture of the process. The techniques are not the same. I'm not going because it's really deep, those details. It's coiling, if you want to know. It's coiling with pinching, scratching, smoothing, burnishing. This is the technique. And after you have the firing is in a kiln, and that's the kiln they inherited from the Canarian people, which came in the 17th and 17th century, beginning 18 in Dominican Republic. On the left, you can see some picture of pot they are making, and the Oya, it's the bottom one, look like the canary we could see in St. Lucia. That's what we call the cooking pot. To conclude, we can say that the pottery activity is really in decline in the Caribbean. And what we start to do, and we have to continue, is to write those last evidence of this traditional pottery art craft, because we are losing it. They don't want to transmit it. Actually, you have indigenous people in Dominica. They lost this knowledge, and they want to learn how to make pots and how their ancestors were making pots. We try to help them with what we see in archaeology. We try to help them with what we find in ethnoarchaeological survey. But I don't know, it's maybe due to how things need to go, but we still need to continue to record them as we can. As it's written, then if what we can see, it's from the indigenous, the pre-Columbian time until now, some elements have disappeared, and we cannot find them in the record from the first ethno-historical sources. We cannot find them actually. That means there is an evolution in this process, but some can be found, like the varnish, the gum palm used to burnish. Those are written in the sources, but we don't find them actually, and I couldn't find them like in indigenous ceramic. We can see that there is heritage from indigenous European and African, but sometimes it's difficult to make the separation between those 3 big heritage. But what we can say that the ceramic process in the Caribbean, it's really a creolized process, and the ceramic is really an adoption, and what we can say a creolized style, or Creole style. I will say creolized style with element coming from all abroad, or all what can constitute our Caribbean identity. Thank you.
Thank you.